Sups up everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're basically consolidating everything we talked about in the live stream the day before. I say we, I really mean I, because chat's not with me here right now, but thanks to chat we actually had a pretty fruitful discussion when it comes to Xiao versus Alhaitham, right? The pros and cons, who's better. And the first things that we got to get out of the way, a lot of people would right now be commenting around, Walrus, stop this right now. You shouldn't even be comparing these two characters. They're completely different categories of characters. Yes, they're main DPSs, but the main DPSs have different subcategories, so you shouldn't really be comparing Xiao versus Alhaitham. It doesn't work. The point here isn't really to compare Xiao versus Alhaitham, like strength-wise and their merits, stuff like that, right? The main reason you haven't really seen me doing one of these kind of videos is that for the longest time, it just feels like characters and banners haven't really been equal. It hasn't really been a fair comparison, or it's just there's such a clear obvious winner either this patch or next patch that nobody really needs the kind of videos. But with the amount of newer players that's coming in, and yes, there are a ton of newer players currently flooding into the game due to Hoyoverse's great promotion, this is really not a patch you want to screw up your start in. And I think there's a lot to be said here because Hoyoverse is flooding players into the game. If you guys are a newer player right now, please comment down below how you found Genshin Impact, because the amount of newer players currently flooding in is just absurd. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Hoyoverse has lined up Raiden Shogun along with Xiao, Alhaitham, Yelan, Hu Tao with like the Aqua Simulacra and Staff of Homa all in one patch. I think really they're doing it for the newer players along with the Liyue 4-star selection thing. It's everything to set up newer players for success. So that's why this video, I feel like it's necessary, because Xiao versus Alhaitham stretches far beyond just these two characters. In this video, I'm going to cover the biggest reason why this decision is so crucial, and it's not really because of Xiao or Alhaitham. It's not because who you pick up and who's better. It's what you are giving up. The importance of your decision right now, it's not really what you get, but you also have to consider what you are giving. For people who are even small spenders, even medium-sized spenders, if you only drop $100 to $200 a month, you're not going to walk away from this patch like scot-free and completed if you are wanting to pick up every valuable asset. So let's just pull it all back. That was kind of the prelude. This video is going to cover quite a bit of stuff, but let's start by talking about Xiao and Alhaitham. I know it's not Alhaitham, it's Tignari. I don't have Alhaitham yet, so let's just use Tignari to kind of fill the space right now. If you are somebody, let's say, who started this current patch 3.3 or maybe 3.2, and you've really highly invested into recent banners, picked up a high constellation Fadozan, a lot of people, myself included, would say ideally you would need a C6 Fadozan to justify picking up Xiao. I think in the scenario of having a C6 Fadozan, Xiao's pickup can be justified over Alhaitham because you have dumped an unholy amount of resources on selective unique characters that at this point, going for Alhaitham, you likely don't have the resource to flesh out the character properly anyways. That's just how I feel. Even if you only have like a C4 Fadozan, I think picking up Xiao can be justified. And this is in retrospect from the discussions we had yesterday, because if you started in the last two patches, either 3.2 or 3.3, hell, even I would say 3.1, if you started back then and you've invested into a C4 Fadozan or above, picking up Xiao suddenly can feel more justified than picking up Alhaitham, because you've been playing, let's say, the game for what, 3 months, give or take, maybe a little more than that, right? I would still consider you like a mid-game player. You're probably like what, AR 55 or something. I don't know how long it takes to get to AR 55. You're probably done constructing one solid team and you're working on either your second one, or if you're lucky, you're working on your third one already. So in that case, that's the reason why I think people should be pulling for Xiao, period. Any other scenario, let's say if you're sitting here right now, you don't have Fadozan, or you have a C0 to C3 Fadozan, I don't think it's really justified to pull for Xiao, because there's a decent chance that with a C3, C4 Fadozan, you have a C0 Scaramouche, or maybe not. And if you're lucky, you might even have a C1 Scaramouche. And that's also another thing to consider. If you already have Scaramouche, especially if you already built up Scaramouche, is Xiao really a good pickup right now? Let's say you don't have a C6 Fadozan, you already have a C0 or C1 Scaramouche that you already built up. Is it really justified to pull for Xiao, right? See, that's something you also have to ask yourself, because really, The obvious answer is no, but there's an even more obvious answer that resides within your kokoro, if you know what I mean, in your heart, right? Ask yourself that question. Seriously, ask yourself that question. When it comes to Alhaitham, just like we talked about earlier, if you have characters that's just invested all over the place, right? You have inflexible characters, you follow the meta, meaning like you got your Xingqiu, Zhangling, Bennett, you maybe got like Raiden Shogun, you maybe got some other, just, you know, like the meta, the S tier, high A tier, 4 stars, and some maybe 5-star characters you already selected, built up. I think it's a smarter choice to go for Alhaitham over Xiao. Now, just like I have on screen, it's smarter to go for Yelan generally over Hu Tao. That's just generally speaking. If I don't look at your account, you ask me for blind advice, just like rapid fire, give me 5 seconds to answer, Yelan or Hu Tao? Yelan, right? That's how I'd answer. It's the same situation with Alhaitham and Xiao. If you just ask me blindly, like some random dude, is it a better choice to go for Xiao or Alhaitham? It's gonna be Alhaitham. Alhaitham likely stretches out to more team compositions using more characters. Xiao's teams are pretty solidified at this point. Now, strength-wise, I don't think Xiao necessarily will lose strength-wise to Alhaitham when they're both properly built and invested into. I think they're both going to be relatively well-functioning characters. I think Xiao currently should be the best AoE DPS in the game if you have a high Constellation Father-Zan. It's no-brainer. Xiao is such a strong unit if you have the team that you can construct around it. But if you don't have Zhongli, you don't have a high Constellation Father-Zan, the guy starts falling apart, right? He has issues, both mentally and I don't know where I'm even going with that. Anyways, let's skip over this part now, right? I hope you guys get the general idea. Xiao is a specialized character that requires a much more unique composition to make him flourish, and I do believe ceiling-wise, Xiao should be higher than Alhaitham. That's just how most hyper carries in the game work. If you're willing to put in the resources, they reach great heights, because not only are their teams very restricted, they're also very expensive to build, versus characters like Alhaitham, who are much more flexible, but they have a lower ceiling, but because of the flexibility they offer, you can play them in more variations, give or take. They still do enough damage, more than enough, in fact, but you know, that's a trade-off here. Now, on to what you'll be missing. Like, see, this is the biggest thing. When it's Xiao versus Alhaitham, it's very difficult to just strictly talk about Xiao versus Alhaitham. But if that's all you came for, thank you so much. Like, subscribe. We're moving on to what you're missing out, right? Hu Tao and Yelan arguably are like slightly better versions of the characters we're talking about previously. Now, again, it's not fair to compare these characters in this manner, whereas Hu Tao's not strictly a hyper carry such as Xiao, and Yelan's not what Alhaitham really is. I mean, Yelan is far from Alhaitham, but when it comes to versatility, usefulness, and general meta-wise, Hu Tao and Yelan are just more widely used. It's mainly because, yes, Hu Tao and Xiao shares a similar issue where their HPs are constantly being drained away and you're playing around with lower HP. Hu Tao is much easier to maneuver than Xiao. Now, people's answer to Xiao plunging enemies away last time I talked about this issue was that, well, you just position Xiao outside of the enemies on the outer edge of the group of enemies and you push them all in the same direction, then you follow and you push them all in the same direction and then you follow, right? But by doing so, another comment did mention out that by doing so, you are missing out on hitting the enemies on this side of I don't know if I'm doing this right. You're missing out on the chance to hit enemies on this side. So essentially, you're just having DPS loss. Your answer to solving an issue for Xiao is to create another problem for yourself. Now, because Xiao's damage is so high, it isn't necessarily a problem. These are the kind of situations you have to deal with for Xiao. You lose something to gain something. It depends on you. What do you value more? Whereas for Hu Tao, she oftentimes don't have that problem. And even if she does have issues with like, oh, there's 3 enemies and they're kind of scattered across the room, she herself can solve the issue by spacing herself properly and maneuvering herself with proper animation canceling to solve the issue. You can skewer enemies with Hu Tao. I've talked about this in previous videos as well. So Hu Tao's fixes is more inherent to her character, whereas Xiao's fixes is kind of like a trade-off, and it shows in their usage. Hu Tao just has a better usage rate overall. People consider her to be less hassle, even though Hu Tao has the animation cancel, whereas Xiao doesn't have to animation cancel. Yes, Xiao has animation cancel. Believe, like you guys might not know this. Xiao has animation cancel. She has a plunge charge attack animation cancel, which if you get the rhythm right, it's a DPS increase, but it's not necessary. Whereas Hu Tao is absolutely necessary. But even still, people have chosen Hu Tao over Xiao, and for good reason. I just felt like has been more consistent over Xiao, and that's it. Yelan is a no-brainer. I think at this point, I don't need to shower her with any more praises. People know how good she is. She's a great character to replace Xingqiu in teams. She's a great character to add on to Xingqiu in teams. Just generally an amazing character. Great vertical progression, great free-to-play weapons, great SC0, even greater SC1. All her constellations seems like they do something, and she scales up to be the best DPS in the game right now at C6. Is she the best character, period? Probably not, because she's just a DPS character that has high throw off-field damage, right? Amazing character, but the best? Probably not. Anyways, we gotta talk about the weapon. When it comes to the weapons, this is also potential that people are losing out on. The Aqua Simulacra and the Staff of Homa are two weapons that are very sought after for people. So if you're a newer player, you probably don't know this, or you just heard about this. These two weapons are insanely good, not only for their respective characters, but also just as general weapons to be used on, for example, Staff of Homa. All DPS characters can use this weapon. I mean, all spear DPS characters can use this weapon. Aqua Simulacra, all bow DPS could use this weapon, right? It works. Their passives are very, very straightforward. When it comes to their passives, I think the bow's passive is a little less restrictive, because if you guys look here, direct your attention to activate a part of Staff of Homa's passive skill, your wielder has to be below 50% health. Now, this isn't like a deal breaker or anything, but it's pretty important to, I mean, if you're not using it, you're losing out on 50%, right? So overall, people would say like, well, Aqua Simulacra is probably the better weapon to pick up. But again, like, take this stuff with a huge grain of salt, because let's say if you have 7 bow users and 3 spear users, which weapon do you think is going to be the better pickup for you? Generally speaking, it's going to be the bow, right? Having 1 extra bow for all your bow characters is just going to be a no-brainer. But then again, what if you have 7 bow users and 3 spear users, but all 3 of your spear users are built, but none of your bow users are built, right? Take this with a grain of salt. I said this in the past, but I don't want to hammer home too much, is that you can't lose on this weapon banner, but you actually can, because I believe there's a 25% chance that you're going to get a standard banner weapon, meaning like you're not going to get any of these weapons, but rather the standard weapons that you can always get from the standard banners. But if you're willing to keep going, I guess, you really can't lose if you have enough gems piled up. What I'm saying. Remember, people, when you're looking at characters from next patch, don't just think about what you can get and what the characters offer. You have to weigh it against what you're choosing to skip. And if your decision has been crystal clear, then all the best luck to you. I think next patch is going to be a great patch, both for veteran players who are trying to bolster their accounts, power up characters, or newer players trying to get in and pick up some of the best units in the game that'll serve them in the long run. Name's EroticWalruss. Feel free to like, subscribe. Going to be talking a lot next patch about these characters. I'm not going to focus too hard on Xiao, because he's not my main character, but I'll try my best to highlight Alhaitham's strength for you as well. I'm going to be focusing more on Hu Tao, because I play this character a ton. Okay, till next time, Rejoice, stay safe, peace, bye.